Dynamic management views and functions return server state information that can be used to monitor the health of a server instance, diagnose problems, and tune performance. Of course, when I say server in this context, I am talking about SQL Server. I'm talking about the database engine. And the key word in the context of the conversation is dynamic management views. So these are management views, but the result set that you typically get from these views change over time. Now, if you are watching this in 2024, you may basically wonder why I would spend time with all these backend scripts. These are some of the scripts I used to use when I was a SQL Server administrator, and they're incredibly useful. Just these top three, these are the top three in my view, dynamic management views or DMVs that any DBA who is working on SQL Server will be interested in. The first one is sys.dmexec connections. So sysdmexec connections tells you about all the connections established to the instance you are running the script on, whether it's an on-premise instance, an Azure SQL managed instance, wherever SQL Server is running, this works, right? It just works. So it tells you all the connections. Now, sysdmexec sessions, it has the scope is the whole server scope, view. If I've started the process of interacting with the engine, my entry will show up there. I will show up as a row in sysdmexec session saying this guy is here. Now, sysdmexec request takes it to the next level, if I may say so. So if you want to think of it as active sessions, sessions that are actually executing currently in SQL Server, that's what this dynamic management view tells you. So I typically think of them as some kind of hierarchy, starting from connections to sessions to requests. So if the session is not active, it's not executing anything at this moment, you probably will not see it in sysdmexec request. So for an idle instance, you will see nothing. You see nothing, or you're just background. You probably see just background, sessions running, right, executing something at that very instant, right? This is particularly running here. Now this tells you that at this very instant, this select statement is running. And if you look very closely, that is actually my select statement. If you look at my my connection and my request session ID rather here, 71, that is the same session ID you have here. So this is at the point in time that I executed this this select statement, this particular SQL query was running. That's what it's basically telling you. Now, if I run the other, you'll probably see more. This is about 62 rows. You will see that it returns about 74 rows in this instance, with a lot of the sessions sleeping, right? And this exact one running. Again, my session that is running. So you find out that you will be able to see other sessions that are sleeping, as well as those that are currently running, right? Unlike a request that gives you what is actively running. So connections will give me everyone that is talking to this server from outside the server, if you like. So I'm not going to see background sessions here. I'm not going to see background sessions or sleeping sessions that are running in the background from the server itself. These are sessions that are associated with an entity, a client coming from somewhere else outside the server that needs to talk to this server that I'm working on, right? And it gives me all sorts of information about these sessions. Now, there is we can go over to Microsoft documentation and find out about the details of these dynamic management views. It's very simple. If you put this in Google, you will get a lot of detail about these dynamic management views, and you'll be able to tell what the columns are, and probably what the columns mean, and then probably how to manipulate them. You can also do it very easily here, right here, with a command called exec sp columns. All right, so if I execute the stored procedure sp sp underscore columns on this dynamic management view, I'm going to get all the columns that are associated with this dynamic management view. Column name, column, right? I'm going to get what the data type is, int, date time, varchar, and so forth. I'm also going to get a little bit of information about them. Now, one of the things this tells me is how what data type. That's one of the key information there, and generally some of the columns are descriptive. Net packet size, for example, parent connection ID, session ID, and so forth, right? I could also run this for the other two dynamic management views and find out what columns are available. All right, once I do that, I get the list of columns as well. Again, quite descriptive, gives me the data type and so forth, right? Same for request. Now, obviously, I don't get a description of what these columns mean, but I can always get that from Microsoft documentation. So I'm probably going to put some links in the description of this video to let people know where they can find information about these dynamic management views. Now, the beautiful thing, of course, I can easily run queries on these specific DMVs and get the information I had, displayed before. I can get the information I displayed before, for example, about what connections are sitting here, what sessions are sitting here, and what requests are sitting on hitting the server. I could decide that I want to, narrow down the number of columns I'm looking for, and for me to do that, I have to understand what the columns mean. I could also put in some where clauses, right, so that I narrow down the set. That is what this query has done as well. So basically, isolate specific, let's just dig a little deeper into this. What I've done is I'm selecting specific columns based on what I know the columns are for, right? Login name obviously tells me who is the owner of this connection, or who is making this connection, really. And then the scriptwriter has done an alias so that the result set is more readable, right? And the same with the program name, aliases. Every time you use a square bracket in SQL Server, what it does is avoids the problem you have with spaces in your column name or in your alias, right? You see that the typical column name would have an underscore to make sure it's one name, right? But if you want to use a column name that is more descriptive, more friendlier to use, you can do an alias that have these square brackets. You also see that we've used a lot of also aliases, not just for the column names, but for the table names as well. SysDM exec connections is called sec, SysDM exec sessions assess, and so forth. So there's a join in between these two dynamic management views to get columns from both DMVs, right? And the join is performed on the basis of a common column entity that they have, a column that they have, which is the session ID, right? Or rather, in the case of the connection, the SysDM exec connection, the most recent session ID mapped to the session ID in the SysDM exec sessions dynamic management view. So that is used to return a result set of the exact columns I want that are most useful for me in terms of what I want to accomplish. So you could take up these dynamic management views and just play around with them, deliver a broad range of result sets. I can choose to take up this script that someone has written, then add a few columns of my own on what I want and extend the use, for example. Now, this is one that I typically use a whole lot, right? It has the capacity to extract quite a few columns from these views, from all three views. This is the exec sessions alias as S, exec request alias as R, and a third one, right? Now, connections is not here. A third one, sysdm exec SQL text, which basically extracts the SQL statement that an active session is running. So in this case, the dominant view is the request view, the exec request view, which tells me of active sessions. And I use that view, I combine it with the sysdm exec session view, and in turn do a cross apply. These are all expressions in SQL Server, which we'll discuss in later sessions. I do a cross apply so that for each output, for each results are returned in this initial join, I pick up the associated SQL statement that is running. That's what it's going to give me. If I run it right now, I may get a blank because the conditions I stated are not present. So first of all, I have excluded my own session. If you exclude your own session, obviously I wouldn't see what I was seeing before. But if I were to mask this out and include my own session, right? Yeah. So in order, I'll just exclude my own session by commenting the where clause there. If I do that, I'm probably going to get my session, which is 65 right here. It's running. It's not waiting at all. And then how many seconds have elapsed? 0.005 seconds have elapsed since it started running. And this is the statement. I could copy this out and show you that it is the exact statement I was actually running, right? Okay. So in essence, this has been designed to become a very useful script just by combining a few dynamic management views. A very, very useful script. Typically, what I used to use it for was to check whether there were any blockers and who was the wait resource. So I'm going to try to demonstrate that here. First of all, let me remove this. I'm going to log in separately as another user and demonstrate some what I would probably see in production. So I'm just going to go in with another user. So I'm just going to select a few queries from DBO customer and gives me this result set. Now I could do something, right? I could encapsulate this in a transaction. So I say begin tran, right? And then I will not say end tran. Yeah. So I'm just going to say begin tran. So it becomes what you call an open transaction. When I do that, if I go back to my other session where I'm checking who is in the box. So and instead of making this a select statement, I'll just do, or rather maybe an update statement rather. I'm going to do that as an open transaction. Why am I doing that? I'm going to do that because I want the session to be open. But in order for that to happen, something has to block this session. So I'm going to go to my other session, right? I'm going to go to my other session and then say new query and attempt to do something similar, right? So if I attempt to do something similar I'm going to get a block. So this query never drops, and then I'll come back here to my session for checking who is present. Where is it? That's it. And then once I do that, I'm going to see that there is a session 77 which is suspended because it's being blocked by a modification lock held by another session 54. And if we go back to our two sessions here, this is 54. It's done executing from its perspective, but because I opened the transaction, it's not committed and it's not rolled back. So it's basically blocking the other session, which is session 77, and session 77 is just running on and on. So basically, looking at this view gives me all that information that this session 77 is suspended because it's being blocked by session 54, and it tells me the kind of lock that is happening, which is a modification lock, update modification lock, right? And it tells me how long it's been waiting, right? If I run it again, you see that the wait time has incremented. I can see what statement is being executed. I can see who owns this session. Essentially, I can see where it's running from, what's the host name of the where it's running from, and the process ID. And it's a lot of useful information to isolate what's happening here with respect to this block. Now, if I go back to the session that is the blocker, and all I have to do is to say rollback. Once I say rollback, this session drops, and it now holds its own lock until I say rollback, or in this case commit. All right, so that's essentially what happens here. You're able to see into the activity instance with these dynamic management views. You can use them in all sorts of ways to get what you want, right? Once you begin to understand, you can use them in all sorts of ways to get what you want once you begin to understand the structure of the views. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this useful. Do subscribe, and do let me know if you have any questions.